So long ago, eons, Hawaii was still hidden beneath the waves of the world's largest ocean, and growing hour by hour. Fed by the very red-hot substance of the earth. Still out of sight, still just a promise, Hawaii would be made of earth, water, wind, and fire. And most important, fire. The Hawaiian paradise was born in a furnace, the same raging heat that accompanied the birth of the world. Lava, nature's potent brew of silica, magnesium, potash, iron, and other minerals, heated up to 2,000 degrees. It spouted up through more than 15,000 feet of ocean to form glowing mountain peaks at last in the open air. Conquered and cooled by the Pacific, the lava became dry land. In geologic time, all this happened hardly more than yesterday, about 25 million years ago. But time enough, 25 million seasons of trade winds, rainstorms, sunlight, and ocean surf, to transform lava into sand and soil. Time for seeds carried by wind and wave to take root and flourish in what may be the most agreeable climate in all the world. Summertime temperatures in the 80s, dropping in wintertime down into the 70s. Through most of those 25 million years, the islands were the exclusive property of the birds and the bees, and approximately 12,000 other species of plant and animal life. But no human beings to call this paradise. It was only about 1,000 years ago, hardly ancient times, that the first people happened upon these shores. The reason for Hawaii's big secret can be gleaned from any map of the broad Pacific. These spots of earth called Ni'ihau, Kauai, Oahu, Molokai, Lanai, Kaho'olawe, Maui, and Hawaii were hidden by an impossible distance of ocean. And so Hawaii remained as it was, suspended in time, unpopulated, and hardly even imaginable. Then came an irresistible force, the most extraordinary sailors and navigators ever. Reckoning their course by the stars, paddling huge double-hulled canoes that carried as many as 50 people, plus animals and food supplies, they could conquer more than 100 miles a day, across thousands of miles of unexplored Pacific. Scholars believe the first Polynesians came from Southeast Asia, from what is now called Malaysia and Indonesia. They perfected their sailing techniques through centuries of island hopping. They were bold, adventurous, tightly organized, and always, it seems, drawn by another horizon. Sometime around 800 or 900 AD, a fleet of Polynesian seafarers, probably from the Marquesas Islands near Tahiti, followed a star that led them here. The first human beings, and the first Hawaiians, set foot on Hawaii. About 2 centuries later, another wave of new Hawaiians arrived, these from Tahiti, Bora Bora, and Raiatea, now drawn by the legend of the voyage of the Marquesans and their fabulous discovery in the north. Today, on the big island of Hawaii, along the Kona Coast, we will find a faithful restoration of a hallowed place called Pu'uhonua Ohonaunau, the City of Refuge. It's more than just Polynesian art and craft. It's a reminder that all was not peace and tranquility in paradise. Tribal warfare developed over the centuries among the people of the separate islands. There was also a rigid system of taboos, inflexible laws of behavior. One did not walk in the footsteps of a royal personage. Women did not eat with men. To flaunt one of these laws might bring catastrophe to a village in the form of a tidal wave or a lava flow. And yet, a person who broke the taboo, even an enemy warrior, might make amends in the City of Refuge. In olden times, the only way to get to this sanctuary was to swim across a bay known as the Shark's Den. If you made it, you were safe, even from a king. The tranquility of this place lingers today, the feeling of serene confidence, of safety, and of having a fresh start on Hawaii's Big Island. And when you think about it, all the islands are a kind of refuge for the modern-day traveler, making the best of a hard-earned vacation. Cross a personal den of sharks or a sea of troubles, and unwind in paradise. Among the most important of Hawaii's many discoverers was the famous English seafarer Captain James Cook, who on the 18th day of January, 1778, in the midst of Hawaiian harvest time, sailed into Waimea Bay at Kauai and was joyously welcomed as the god of agriculture. Cook did some exploring and named his discovery after the 4th Earl of Sandwich, his financial backer in England. When Cook returned to the Sandwich Islands the following year, he ran into trouble. In a gale off the Kohala coast of the Big Island, one of his 2 ships broke a mast, and the expedition limped into this bay, Kealakekua. Suddenly, these Europeans didn't look like gods. February 14th, 1779, Cook and a group of his men go ashore at Ka'awaloa, attempting to kidnap the local Hawaiian chief for ransom in a dispute over stolen property from one of the ships. This ill-advised and still controversial move resulted in the death of nearly 20 of the English explorers, including Captain James Cook. Among those who escaped the ordeal was one of Cook's officers, William Bligh, who later made history of his own as skipper of the HMS Bounty. The people Cook discovered may have been, from his point of view, primitive, bound by rigid feudalism, superstition, and menacing taboos. But even Cook realized that the natives of the Sandwich Islands were masters of their environment, very much at home in paradise. Master sailors and swimmers, they were part and parcel of the sea that embraced them, the endless waters that gave birth to the islands. And they were masters of the land, as much a part of it as of the sea. They took what was needed, planted and harvested enough to live and live well. At least the men did. The women were not allowed to eat coconuts, or bananas, or certain kinds of fish. This was taboo, or in Hawaiian, kapu. The most important single person in Hawaii's history was not Cook or any of the Caucasians that followed him, but a native Hawaiian, nephew of one of the warring chiefs. He was aggressive, smart, far-sighted, and ambitious. He understood the white man's weapons and politics, and after years of bloody battles with rival chieftains, he emerged the victor and king of a unified island nation. His name was Kamehameha. There are 2 almost identical statues of this born leader, one in busy downtown Honolulu, and the other here, where Kamehameha was born, the small town of Kapa'au on Hawaii's Big Island. Old Kamehameha died in the year 1819. The king's offspring ruled the islands for 3/4 of a century, until 1872, when Kamehameha V died a bachelor and childless. Thus ended a native bloodline of Hawaiian leadership from the days of Captain Cook to the eve of the modern age. In August of 1819, the year Kamehameha I died, a brigantine sailing ship left Boston Harbor carrying a small band of Protestant missionaries. The voyage round the Horn to the Sandwich Islands lasted 6 months, but the missionaries' impact on Hawaii would last forever. They and those who followed them from New England built clapboard churches after the fashion of home, with conical steeples and gleaming white paint. And they began their work of conversion, a mighty effort from their perspective. The Reverend Hiram Bingham, on his arrival from Vermont, said this of the native Hawaiians: "The appearance of destitution, degradation, and barbarism among the chattering, almost naked savages, whose heads and feet and much of their sunburnt, swarthy skins were bare, was appalling. Some of our number, with gushing tears, turned away from the spectacle." The preachers and their wives brought more than morals from New England. They brought medicine, hygiene, education, and new ways of organizing society. High on the early agenda for social change was the necessity of putting more clothes on the natives and of banning the hula, a means of storytelling that seemed shocking and sensual. Now the hula is as much a language as a dance. Arms, hips, and torso telling tales of warriors, kings, heroes, and gods. The missionaries found no written language in Hawaii, and compared with English, the spoken one was odd indeed, one that could be expressed in just 12 letters, the 5 vowels plus H, K, L, M, N, P, and W. The natives quickly found out about palapala, education, and pule, religion. These were learned from the Haules, Caucasians, and when the ali'i, native chiefs and nobles, were converted to the Calvinist God, the missionaries' triumph was complete. By 1839, the entire Bible had been translated and printed in Hawaiian. Once again, the year 1819 surfaces in Hawaiian history. The year Kamehameha died, the year the missionaries, armed with hellfire, left Boston for paradise. In 1819, the first of a gathering armada of whaling ships called on Hawaiian ports, en route to breeding grounds of the sperm whale further west in Japanese waters. Whales were big business then, and that's not stretching a metaphor. Whale oil was used to light up homes and street lamps across the United States of America and Europe. Whale bones were used in women's corsets and in umbrellas. Whale oils were also used as a delicate lubricant for watches and other instruments, for dressing leather, and making candles and soap. The whaling ships also carried mail and cargo between paradise and the rest of the world. The whaling era sent a shock through the new organization of Hawaiian life under the missionaries. Whaling crews, lusty, hungry, and thirsty, demanded and found action in ports like Lahaina on Maui. Prostitution flourished despite the preacher's brimstone. The collision between Hawaiians and the Haules, white men, had a devastating effect on the native population. Captain Cook's men had brought venereal disease. More came with the whalers. The island's population in Cook's day, about 300,000. At the end of the 19th century, 40,000. The end of the whaling era was signaled in 1859 with the discovery of oil in Pennsylvania. Seas that had swarmed with ships and whale hunters fell silent and vacant again, and Hawaii's ports became respectable again. There is still something about arriving in Hawaii by ship that seems appropriate, historically right. And cruise ships do call upon paradise, as always, though not as often as they did in the days before airlines. Hawaii is a stop for trans-Pacific ocean liners carrying passengers to and from the USA and Asia and around the world. And there are regular cruises from Hawaii to California. Travel by freighter is an option for people with plenty of time and patience about schedules and deadlines. For adventurers, lovers of the sea and ships, for people fresh out of college, those newly retired, anybody writing a book, doing research, or just killing time, freighter travel is just the ticket. Ships sail regularly out of San Francisco to far eastern ports and then call on Hawaii en route back to the West Coast. At Lahaina on Maui, a site that really evokes the 19th century heyday of sailing. The two-masted brig Carthaginian, now a floating museum with exhibits on whales and whaling. And on Kauai, another symbol of days gone by, the Kilauea Point Lighthouse, a beacon that once signaled to ships far away in the night that paradise was just over here. What could be more agreeable than this? Sails moving with stateliness and grace over Hawaiian waters. A splash of color on a blue sky, sunshine, trade winds, and freedom. How sweet it is, Hawaiian sugarcane, growing out of rich volcanic soil, blowing in an ocean breeze. It's been a major cash crop for more than a century, getting its first break into the American market during the Civil War, when Union access to Confederate sugar was cut off. The crop has had ups and downs in recent years, but long ago earned its nickname, King Sugar. More Hawaiian wealth growing in the tropical sun, coconuts. They're exported into the consumer market and also in a dried form known as copra, a source of oil. That yellow pod, by the way, is water repellent and sealed tight by nature. It's how coconuts floated and took root on far scattered Pacific islands long before human habitation. If you connect the word pineapple to the name Dole, it's because a man named James D. Dole bought the entire island of Lanai in 1922 so he could raise pineapples. And the fruit has been an aspect of Hawaiian economics and politics since even before that. Hawaii produces a major part of the world's canned pineapple. Bananas earn big dollars in Hawaii. So does coffee. And talk about a real native plant, taro. From the root of this plant, peeled and cooked and pounded, comes a dish called poi, one of the healthiest and least fattening of all starches. It's been a staple of the Hawaiian diet for centuries, and in the old primitive days of kapu, it was the mainstay of a woman's diet. Here's something as Hawaiian as poi, enjoyed by the natives for generations before the advent of tourism. Surfing remains the glamorous sport here and always will. Why? Simply because the biggest and best-shaped surfing waves in the world are forever pounding down on Hawaiian beaches. Surfing is a year-round challenge in the endless summer of paradise, but technically speaking, it's the winter months that bring the year's tallest and most spectacular waves, a time of international competition and thousands of spectators. Novices and rank amateurs are welcome in the Major League Hawaiian surf, although some beaches are better left to the pros, especially on winter days. Fact is, there are plenty of beaches and plenty of expert instructors on Oahu and other islands to help you get your feet wet. The price is right, too. Group lessons at $10 to $15 an hour per person, and surfboard rentals run about $15 for a whole day. Now, speaking of Waikiki Beach, the traveler is dared to find a more congenial spot for cooling it in warm tropical sunshine. Why are all these people at Waikiki? Kamehameha the Great understood. He had a home built here for his favorite wife, Queen Kaahumanu. Incidentally, Kamehameha had 21 wives. Certainly such a man would enjoy the sights along Waikiki today. Actually, the king might not recognize his favorite stretch of sand nowadays. Long gone are the palm groves that came down to the surf's edge, replaced by a flowering of high-rise hotels. The new Waikiki is sleek, chic, and comfortably modern. And the island is true to its name. Oahu in Hawaiian means the gathering place. an appropriate name for an island that attracts about 4 million visitors a year. In the background of Waikiki's splendor is the dominating presence of Diamond Head, a massive rock formation as easily recognizable as Gibraltar or Yosemite's El Capitan. The natives used to call it Leahi, which means brow of the yellowfin tuna. Modern-day imagination has some trouble visualizing that. Anyway, Diamond Head is the name given to Leahi by British sailors who believed they had found diamonds there. Actually, there were calcite crystals. For most vacationers, there's simply not enough time to explore the islands by boat, and so the joy of island hopping is almost exclusively an airborne experience, and an exhilarating one at that. Right now, let's head north and west from Oahu's gathering place and soar a mere 90 miles to the stunningly beautiful island of Kauai, a majestic wilderness of stone canyons, lush forests, waterfalls, beaches, and fewer tourists. No, we are not in Arizona, and this is not the Grand Canyon. It's Waimea Canyon, running down the western third of Kauai, in some parts a mile wide and 3,000 feet deep. Patiently chiseled out of volcanic rock over the centuries by the Waimea River. And this is not the Amazon River or the Congo, though the landscape has a definite safari-like atmosphere. It's the Waimea River, and we're on our way to the Fern Grotto. Now, the name Kauai has been considerably shortened from its original designation, Kauai Amano Kalanipo, which means fountainhead of many waters from on high and bubbling up from below. Many waters is a good way to describe the tropical splendors of Kauai. On the windward side of the island, rainfall can be phenomenal. In fact, this is one of the wettest spots on Earth, and this is also the greenest of Hawaii's islands. That rain, more than 400 inches a year, is transformed into streams that rush down over rock-strewn mountains from the highest elevations with a gathering force, tumbling over cliffs to merge eventually with the only navigable waterways on any of the islands. Rain, sun, the richest of soils, and time all combine to make the Fern Grotto a veritable greenhouse, one of the reasons that Kauai is known as the nearest thing to Eden, officially nicknamed the Garden Island. In centuries past, the Ali'i, tribal nobility, kept much of this island to themselves as their own playground. For commoners caught in the royal Eden, the penalty was death. In this democratic age, all visitors are commoners, and the Ali'i have long vanished. Along the coast at Kauai, the Spouting Horn, a tube hollowed out by nature, reaching down through the volcanic rock to the surf below. Oncoming waves bring predictable results.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
The Na Pali Coast of Kauai, a dazzling length of beach 14 miles long, towering cliffs, deep, pristine valleys that empty into the sea on deserted beaches. It's been said that Kauai is the Hawaii that most visitors seek but never find. Only 90 miles, a few minutes by air, from the throngs at Waikiki. In the air again, let's swing south over our Paradise Islands and head for Maui, which is also about 20 minutes by plane from Honolulu, but in the opposite direction from Kauai. Maui was named after the old Hawaiian demigod who, like the Greek Prometheus, gave fire to mankind. There's still evidence of Maui's generosity in the 10,000-foot-high dormant volcano Haleakala, a name which means House of the Sun. Once a boiling cauldron of molten stone, the crater is now steeped in sunshine and silence. There's an observation point on the crater's edge where visitors can get a bird's-eye perspective on this vast 27,000-acre state park, much of which resembles a moonscape. In the midst of Haleakala's lunar barrenness are plants that symbolize life's tenacity and the birth-giving process that explodes from a volcano. The plants are called silver swords. They struggle to take root, then survive for as much as 20 years before blooming once and once only in purple and yellow flowers. Then they die. Down from the crater into the refreshing coolness of the Iao Valley, another of Hawaii's state parks. Misty, fertile, lush, and dominated by a green-clad spire of stone known as the Iao Needle. Here's a vivid lesson on what happens when rain mixes with endless time and goes to work on the bleakness of a dormant volcano. Water, emptied from the clouds onto Maui's House of the Sun, pulled relentlessly toward the sea, finding graceful expression in another area of Haleakala Park, a place known as the Seven Pools, a succession of cascades that come to rest temporarily before making another plunge.
There you go.
These seven pools and their waterfalls resemble nothing so much as the old swimming holes of childhood teleported into a Polynesian wilderness. Once again, airborne and southbound. Destination, Hawaii, what just about everybody refers to simply as the Big Island. The huge volcanic landmass, the size of Connecticut, hanging like a pendant from the bottom of the island chain. Hawaii is not only the biggest and the youngest of the islands, it's also the tallest. Mauna Kea, a volcanic peak at nearly 13,800 feet, is, technically speaking, taller than Everest, since the base is 19,000 feet beneath the waves. The Big Island is so young, it is still in the volatile process of becoming itself. And in between the periodic eruptions of Kilauea and Mauna Loa, steam and sulfur smoke find their way to the surface from deep recesses inside the earth. It's an experience of a lifetime, treasured moment from a Hawaiian vacation, to trek into Volcanoes National Park on the Big Island, to feel the restless earth under your feet, and know you're standing on the very moment of creation as Hawaii continues to grow, expand, and push aside the sea. The two most active volcanoes in the world are here. Kilauea alone erupted more than a dozen times between January 83 and February 84. The molten rivers that reach for the sea can take as much as a century to cool. But in the heart of the fire are future fields of sugarcane and pineapple, future sandy beaches, future palms and coconuts. Hawaii is nicknamed the Orchid Island, and the chief city, Hilo, calls itself the Orchid Capital of America. Thousands of varieties flourish here on the Big Island, where orchids are big business. Rainbow Falls, Hawaii, Kamehameha's island. He was born and raised here, and from here launched his campaign of conquest and ultimate victory. Another story about Kamehameha in the year 1819. In that year, the king decided to do something about the unchecked population of cattle on the Big Island, cows brought here by white settlers in the years after Cook's discovery. He ordered stone walls to be built to keep livestock from wandering over private property. In the 1830s, long before the heyday of the American cowboy, Spanish and Mexican cowherders were brought here to teach Hawaiians how to ride, rope, and manage a ranchero. The Hawaiian word for cowboy is paniolo, which comes from Espanol. Welcome to the Parker Ranch. The Wild West was never more west than right here in Paradise. Started up in 1847 by a man named John Palmer Parker, who had jumped ship to set up life on the Big Island, rounding up stray cattle for pay. Eventually, Kamehameha III gave Parker some land, and that was the beginning. The ranch is now one of the biggest in the world, 250,000 acres, tending one of the biggest Hereford herds anywhere. All of this operated now by the great-great-great-grandchildren of the founder. Needless to say, rodeos are popular here, and most important ones are held on Memorial Day, Labor Day, and the 4th of July. If you're into deep-sea fishing, take the advice of veteran sport fishermen who swear that the Big Island's Kona Coast is the best hunting ground in the world. You can do battle with tuna, barracuda, and if you're up to it, haul in a prize-winning blue marlin. Marlin over 1,000 pounds have been caught within an hour of Kailua. To see the most of the islands, especially the big one, it's best to rent a car and go wandering at leisure through the towns and villages en route to the major attractions. On Hawaii, four-wheel drive vehicles are available to get you to the tall vistas of Mauna Kea. Highway 132 out of Pahoa takes you here. Lava Tree State Park is a weird landscape created by a volcanic eruption in the 18th century, one that came down on a dense forest in a peculiar way, leaving tree-like columns of cooled lava and cylinders of stone where trees had been. The Big Island can't boast of the world-renowned beaches that draw throngs to Oahu and Maui, but Hawaii makes up for it, with rare and exquisite beaches of black sand. Near the town of Kaimu, a long, dark arm of still, cooled lava reaches for the ocean, and waves fizzle into one of the loveliest beaches in all Polynesia, fashioned by jet-black volcanic ash. Most of the island's popular beaches are on the northwest coast, including Honokahau Beach near Kailua, where residents and visitors sunbathe in the nude. First-time visitors to any of the Paradise Islands find out soon enough that suntanning here can be painfully different than back home. For those who haven't been in the sun recently, best advice is take advantage of the beaches in the morning and late afternoon for the first 2 or 3 days. Avoid midday and swab on the sunscreen lotion. Heading back to the capital now for parades and celebrations as we pay respects to the USA's 50th state and its people, as we remember Pearl Harbor, as we do more exploring into Oahu's visual delights and physical pleasures, windsurfing, snorkeling, and cap off the whole adventure with a luau. Sea Life Park, a 40-minute drive from Waikiki, top tourist attraction and one of the world's premier marine parks. Among the features, a 300,000-gallon saltwater aquarium, home for sea life that normally occupies Hawaiian shorelines. Here, scuba diving employees of the park mingle with the denizens. Meantime, on the surface, a new show begins every 2 hours, starring dolphins, whales, and trainers who are as much as home here as the sea mammals. Farther up along Oahu's northwestern coast, Waimea Falls Park, an environment one observer called pure Tarzan.
How about that, Brad? You know, so good, don't you agree? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Aloha, and welcome to the waterfall.
And it's also pure Hawaiian tourism, a tropical lagoon in a jungle-like setting, well-managed, entertaining, and a short trek back to Waikiki. Waimea Falls Park comprises 1,800 acres of canyons, walking trails, and botanical reserves. a wonderland of tropical flora, trees, shrubs, and plants, native not only to Hawaii, but brought from other warm, sea-washed regions like Bermuda, Sri Lanka, and the faraway Canary Islands. Here, the mind boggles at the flamboyant designs achieved by nature in climates like these. When evening falls on Hawaii's capital and cool breezes blow in from the Pacific, visitors mingle with the locals on Honolulu's main drags. Competition among airlines, plus the burgeoning business of package tours, are bringing visitors to Hawaii by the jumbo jetful, and the billions left behind by suntanned and wind-blown tourists has become a key source of wealth in Kamehameha's empire. Nighttime around Waikiki reminds the haoles who've flown in from the other 49 states that they are at home after all, sharing the same commercial culture and many of the same amusements. There's no shortage of things to do at night, especially in Honolulu's clubs and theaters. But the dark never really competes with daylight in paradise, and the habit of early rising, as we're about to see, has a special reward here. For lucky people who love to share precious moments with one or two other people, or completely alone, no event can quite compare with a tropical dawn. Fishing in the surf in the first gray light of a brand new day, while the rest of the nearby world sleeps on. Why, even a fisherman can slumber, knowing his reel is equipped with a tinkling alarm to signal that a catch has been made. Honolulu slowly begins to rouse itself for another day of work and play in the endless summer. In the morning hours, and in fact all day, sunshine combines with Hawaii's ever-changing and fast-moving cloud formations to produce a kaleidoscope of color, light, and shadow. Things can go from technicolor to black and white to pastel to steel gray and silver and back to color again and again, all in the space of a few hours. One of the fastest growing sports in the world, catching on in Asia, Europe, and in windy coastal waters anywhere. But wouldn't you just know that Hawaii has the most and the best? On Oahu's windward coast, there's a beginner school in surfing where you can watch the whales go by as you're learning to skim the waves. Some of the most advanced techniques of the sport, like wave jumping and surf sailing, have been invented and perfected right here. Lessons run about $25 for a 2-hour session. Another benign aspect of learning to windsurf in Hawaii, onshore breezes tend to keep the novice from being swept out to sea. Windsurfing, Hawaiian style. A quick 10 miles from Waikiki, the big league snorkeling grounds of Hana Bay. This is not just another idyllic white sand beach, nor is it simply an ocean bay. It's an extinct volcanic crater, carpeted with coral and populated by some of the friendliest fish of any sea. Snorkelers here come nose to nose with them. The fish in Hanauma Bay's natural aquarium will eat from your hand. Of all the events that have made Hawaii unique in history, special in the eyes of the world, and dear to all Americans, it was the event that occurred on the 7th day of December, 1941, on the island of Oahu, on this spot. Beneath the graceful white monument lies the wreckage of the USS Arizona, destroyed here at Pearl Harbor during the Holocaust that thrust America into World War II. The Arizona Memorial is also a museum of war-related material. Lectures are given and films shown of the actual bombing. Every day, thousands of tourists come to remember, some to learn for the first time, what happened on that day more than 4 decades ago, and during the years of sacrifice that followed. The design of the Arizona Memorial captures the swing of national mood during the war. The downward sloping center symbolizing a feeling of defeat immediately after Pearl Harbor, while the two ends rise strongly to signify victory. Directly under the building and just beneath the waves, the rusted superstructure of the Arizona herself. The ship still holds the 1,102 officers and enlisted men who went with her to the bottom of the harbor. The day following that long ago Sunday morning attack, President Franklin Roosevelt spoke the words which still ring over the Arizona.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Visitors leave their sentiments behind in the form of leis thrown on the water, honoring the sacrifice made at Pearl Harbor by the men who fought and died. The American flag flying over the Arizona is not attached to the building. The staff is welded underwater to the wreckage of the ship itself. Aloha. It means love and affection, greetings, and also farewell, an adaptable word, like the people and the islands themselves. We've covered a good deal of history in this narrative, reaching back 25 million years. But before we say aloha again, just a few words about these Americans called Hawaiians. Half the population is either Caucasian or Japanese. 28% are of mixed race, that is, part Hawaiian. 10% are Filipino, and those of pure Hawaiian blood, just 1%. The peaceful ethnic diversity of these numbers is charming to behold. The face of Hawaii adds luster to the words inscribed on a certain statue half a world away in New York Harbor. It was on March 7th, 1959, at 4 minutes past 10 o'clock in the morning, Hawaiian Standard Time, that Hawaii became the Aloha State, and Americans the world over added another star, the 50th, to the Stars and Stripes. Till next time in paradise, aloha.